Hey guys, Tyler from Meeple Mountain here to bring you more board game content, this time from our friends at Portal Dragon, which is a newer company. You may not have heard of them yet. They have a new game called Colab coming to Kickstarter September 16th, and we're really excited to show you a early advanced prototype version of this game. We've gotten to play around with it, learn all the rules, see how all the bits and pieces come together and function, and we're really excited to give you an advanced look at this game so that when the Kickstarter goes live, you can make an informed decision onto whether this game is right for you. So we're really excited to share what Portal Dragon has whipped up here for you guys. It's a really fun dice placement game where you're going to take on the role of a little wacky, maybe a little evil, scientist who is working on creating their grand work. You're trying to create all of these devices and potions and create these chimeric monsters, all so that you can be the most famous mad scientist in the lab. You're going to be working with your very adorable little mini workers, your minions, that are going to be going out to collect resources and things for you, and then you yourself as a scientist will be going to the various labs in this manner, developing them, building them up, and all in the name of building out cards that are going to go into a tableau that you build. Colab combines some really fun elements together, from a little bit of pseudo worker placement, some dice manipulation, dice drafting, engine building. There's a lot of fun going on here, and we're really excited to jump in. So go ahead, get your lab coat, your safety goggles on, and let's jump in and learn how to play Colab. Colab is a worker placement engine building game for 1 to up to 4 mad scientists where you will be competing with your rival studious folks to create a tableau of various cards of alchemical solutions or wondrous machines or chimeric monsters that you've created, almost, Pokemon style. And you're working to build an engine that's going to give you resources and give you victory points so that you can come out on top at the end of the game. Scientists are going to be racing to build various cards from 3 various decks that are going to go into their tableau, and the game will continue until someone has built their 12th card. At that point, you'll tally up the total amount of points that you have all earned, and whoever has the most is the maddest of the mad inventors. But let's talk a little bit about how you play. And you can see here, we have this board, and I do want to pause and just kind of remind everyone this is a pre-production prototype, so you're probably noticing there's a little bit of bend here on some of these towers, which all of that will be resolved in the final production copy. Just because it's a prototype, the art's not final, and some of the production elements are a little goofy, but honestly, I'm already really excited about the quality of this game just from what I'm seeing here on the prototype. So let's talk about the board, and then we'll get into how you play. Now, this board is pre-set up for a 4-player game. We would be able to sit 4 with this. Everyone has done their preset drafting and got their little workers out here, so we'd be ready to start. But one of the things I want to draw your attention to on Colab is how modular the board is. When you play a game of Colab, every aspect of this board is separate. What you have is you have the center, and you have your kind of tower spires here that jut up the board, and will kind of set up the main spokes of this wheel that you'll be going out on. So the various spokes of the wheel are out there. Each of them have a little reward. They have one kind of built-in passive reward that they give you, and then they also have these little random tiles that are double-sided that you'll slot in. That's a random reward that will come into the game. Then we have the various labs. There are 2 labs that build one of each of the types of cards in the game. So these 2 will build monsters, these 2 will build potions, alchemical things, and these 2 will do like inventions, equipment kind of cards. So there's 3 decks, 2 labs for each. On top of them, there are these small tower upgrades that are also randomly divvied out at the start of the game, and those will also give you benefits and bonuses when you take that action. So let's talk a little bit about what the turn of play looks like here in Colab. Each player has their mad scientist and 3 of their little, very adorable 3D printed worker minion Meeple dudes that they're going to send out to collect resources for them. They also have a pool of dice that they're going to be using as well. On their turn, at the start of the game, as I mentioned, this is pre-seeded. There's some resources that are set out here, and everyone takes turns drafting their workers out and collecting some starting resources just to get them going. And also the minion placement is really important, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Once that is done, play will begin in earnest. And what that means is on a turn, you're going to do basically two things. You're first going to do a minion placement action. And what that means is you're going to have to take one of your minions up off the board. Let's take this guy. He's going to come back home. Then you're going to put down another minion somewhere else on the board, and you're going to slot one of these fun little dice into his noggin here and send him out to do some work. So let's say we wanted to put this guy out. He can't go where he just came off of, so let's say he wanted to go over here. You put them on one of the spokes of these spires, and they're going to collect resources for you. So when they go out, they're going to collect the resources shown on the various spoke that they land on. In this case, we'd be gaining a potion token, one of these little science tokens here. They would go to our character sheet. We'd be gaining a card from the equipment deck, so kind of the inventions deck. That's going to go into our hand. And then we actually can gain an additional card of our choosing from the 3 decks. And we take that as well. Let's say we wanted a potion, diversify, and that'll go into our hand as well. Your max hand size of cards is 6. Once you've done that, you're then going to place your scientist. Now your scientist, again, if he was out on the board, he can't ever be placed where he was. You have to go somewhere else. But since it's the first turn, he can go wherever he wants. So let's say we put him here. Now, this is probably a bad place to go given the cards that we have. Let's say maybe we didn't take this. We took a monster card. We'll talk about that in a second. We put him out on the board. The scientist goes in the various labs doing sciencey things. And one of the awesome things about this game is when you go out into a lab, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to build the lab itself. You're going to better the lab. There's these fun little slot-in advancement tiles that will come into play. So for instance, we'd grab one from the top of the deck and we'd slot it in here. This makes the action that you take here better. And once you do that, you also get to utilize the abilities of the minions, even other people's minions that are on the spokes near your tower. So when you come into a lab, you're going to look at the minions that you have around your lab, and you're going to use them to take advantage of some of these bonuses that you're developing in the top of your lab. Now this one, for instance, here takes 2 minions to be adjacent, which there's 5, so we're in a good shape there, and you can get an extra dice. Now there's red dice, blue dice, and purple dice, and you can actually take one of those and add them to your available resource pool of dice that you'll be using. And you'll be using dice to pay for the cards that you'll be putting out, as well as kind of putting them on minions and sending them out to do things as well. And so you'll be able to build up and develop the lab so that your worker placement actions are better, but then you'll also be able to build 1 or potentially 2 of a particular type of card. This lab here, being purple, builds purple monster cards. There's lots of different cards, and we're going to take a more advanced look at these here in just a second in the video, but effectively they're worth some victory points at any point in the game when you build them, and then they also can be worth additional points in in-game scoring. Again, you're basically working to build a very effective engine that chains off of itself and is going to give you a lot of points as you progress through the game. And those are the actions that you'll take on your turn. After that's done, the next player would go repeating these actions, and you'll continue doing this over and over in cycles like this with very, honestly, somewhat simple turns, collecting resources, trying to gain cards and build cards until, again, someone has built their 12th card. And we're going to take a closer look at building cards and how your grid works here in just a minute. But that's the general lay of the land. Scientists will be coming out, even sharing spaces. There's no stealing space from other people, working to build their inventions and become the most famous person that they can. You'll be again spending dice to build these cards, and if once your dice are spent, they go into your bowl where they're used, and at some point you'll want to reset your dice. You can take an action to go to the middle section here to reset all of your dice and collect a few additional resources, and again have dice in your pool ready to go to build additional cards. So let's go ahead and talk about the other half of this game that is really intricate and in-depth, which is the cards and how those are going to factor into how you play Colab. There are 4 total types of cards in your game of Colab. Again, there are the 3 main cards that you're going to be using to build your grid, which are monsters, items, equipment, and alchemy, potions, things like that. The last we'll talk about here in a second, which are basically end game or during game scoring cards, which I actually really like. This was a huge hit to me. We'll just talk about that in 1 second. So let's first talk about the cards that you will be building and adding into your tableau, your engine, so to speak. So again, there are 3 types of cards. All of the cards have a relatively similar kind of look, lay to them. Here's a few examples of each of them, and then we'll talk about them in depth as we go. So here's a few potions as well. Hopefully you guys can see all of those. For each of these cards, they're going to showcase in the top left-hand area the requirements of die, of resources, of things that you'll need to make that particular card. Now you'll notice it's a pretty tall order for a lot of these cards, and they all sometimes need a hodgepodge of the three various types, but they all have a stint towards one of the various colors of die. Now again, start of the game, you get some white die that are equally weighted of one of each of the two symbols for all of the various colors. So there again, there's three colors on your die. There's purple, there's red, and there's blue. And for each of those colors, there are two symbols. So for instance, for purple, there is a brain symbol and a lightning bolt symbol. For blue, there's like a little barometer and a leaf, and then there's a wrench and a bolt for red. So each of the colors have two symbols, and each of the cards are linked predominantly weighted to one of those colors. So monsters are weighted to purple, machines are weighted to red, and potions are weighted to blue. They all kind of have a similar requirement structure, but they all have a unique feel to them by their type and how they function. So again, top left-hand side, you'll see the requirements. So for instance, to make this immortality potion, we would need 2 barometer blues, a blue leaf, a red bolt, and 1 purple brain. Those are the requirements that we need to pay. And there's lots of ways that you can pay for this card. Now remember, when we showed the lay of the board, you're using your scientist to go to a particular area of the lab. But there are minions that are around that area. Those minions all have little dice that are locked into their little heads as they're out there working. When you're building in a particular spot, any scientist can take advantage of the dice that are in the minions to help build this thing. So for instance, if I was to build this and these minions were nearby, I now don't need the brain and the bolt. I only need to worry about the blue. The blue can be sourced from other dice that I have in my active area. They can be sourced from tokens. There's a token color for each of the 3 types. You can spend a token as a wild resource of that color, or any other ways that you can source your resources. You can spend those, expend those tokens, put the dice into your bowl, whatever you need to do to build that card. And once you build that card, it's going to slot into your tableau. And again, your engine. Your engine can be a 4x4 grid. So if this was my engine right here, I'm getting close to being full already. And when you play a card, you can play it orthogonally adjacent to any other card in your grid, assuming that it doesn't go beyond 4. So for instance, if I had 4 across here, I couldn't place another one to the right. That would be too far. So you're going to build a grid, and those cards will play off of each other. Now, as I mentioned again, each of these types of cards, potions, equipment, and monsters, have a little bit of a feel or a theme to them. So let's talk about that for a second. Potions are predominantly going to focus about you recycling your dice. They're going to give you either tokens back that can be used as resources. They'll give you your dice back into your pool so that you're able to continue to take action. So along with being worth points at the end of the game, which is always a good thing, they're going to allow you to potentially cycle your dice and your resources back, giving you longer turns before you need to do a reset, and being able to continue to chain actions, which is helpful. Equipment is predominantly focused on a very fun mechanic in the game, which is called triggering. You'll see these little trigger tokens here, and effectively what they'll do is once per turn, you're going to reset all of your trigger tokens. Anything that's expended on the start of your turn, you'll reset it to its face up side. And then whenever you trigger something, whenever you're able to trigger something, you can flip these if you're able to, and you'll gain their trigger effect. And so these are a lot of times cards that you can utilize turn after turn if you're able to activate them over and over again. And that's a really fun mechanic in the game. These were the most interesting to me. They felt the most mad scientist-y because you're actively participating and constantly trying to trigger your inventions to get the resources from them. Monsters are predominantly focused on the way that you build your grid. So this is where things get a little puzzly. And with these guys, you can focus on how you build things, because whenever you place something adjacent to it or at the end of game scoring based on what's adjacent to particular monsters, you're going to gain or lose points. An interesting one here, for example, is Dr. Pete. He's worth 6 points. That's a lot of points for a single card. Most cards range from 1 to 3. This is a ton of points, but he has a little bit bit of a catch, he is worth -1 point for each monster that is adjacent to him. So what that means is right now he's actually only worth 4 points because I've got a monster above and below him in my grid. I didn't do a very good job building in this case. So there's a lot of fun that can be had by speccing into one type of card. That's a choice that you have to make in the game of Colab, which I really like. Is like, I just want to be a monster tamer. That was how I played the first time. I was like, I'm going to play Pokemon. I want to catch all the monsters, and I really doubled down on the monsters. And so it's a very puzzly game then of like, how do I maximize their score and build things out? And that's really fun. Some of these obviously encourage you to diversify and have multiple types and have kind of the interplay between the 3 types. You can try to double down on one particular type. There's a lot of fun choices in the cards and how you build your grid out. The last type of card I want to talk about are your end game point cards. Now again, remember these are prototypes, so they're going to look a lot sharper and shinier at the end, but these are really fun. At the start of the game, you're dealt 2 of these, and you get to pick how you use them. Every card basically has 2 choices. It has a choice A and a choice B, and the choice A is a mid-game option that you can have as the player. You can choose to play this card, and it'll either be a one-time bonus that you do right away whenever you do it, or it may be ongoing and you'll be able to score additional points based on a thing. And these basically become asymmetric victory conditions for your scientist. As you do a thing, or as you've proven that you've done a thing, you will get points. These things can give you resources that'll help you get ahead and really get your engine going. It may give you victory points, during the game at some point when you think you've done something really well, or you can save these till the end of game and you'll reveal them once the game is over. Remember, the game ends when someone has built their 12th card in their grid. When that happens, you'll kind of go till everyone's had an equal number of turns, and then you'll reveal these, and these will tabulate into your end game score as well. So these can be additional scoring mechanics for you at the end of the game, and that choice is really fun because Colab to me feels a lot about choices, and it gives the player a lot of choice. How do I want to play? What do I want to spec into? How do I want the board to look this game? There's always a modular choice-based element in Colab, and that was something that I really enjoy. So again, this is just a little look at the types of cards. Again, this art isn't even final, and I think it's very beautiful. It's fun. It's got a playful theme and feel to it, and it really pops on the table. Again, you've got these really fun modular score conditions that are going to be unique every time you play the game, and I really enjoy that as well, because you get to adjust your strategy based on what you're dealt and what kind of cards you need to score to, and that's a really fun position to be placed into. So these are just a few quick looks at some of the components of Colab. And that, in a nutshell, is how you play Colab. I hope you enjoyed getting a first look at this exciting little worker placement game with such a fun theme and a really great art style. But what did I think about it? There's a lot to unpack in Colab, and it has with it the traditional joys and struggles that happen with a worker placement kind of dice drafting style game. The first game is going to take you a little bit to learn, in the sense that you've just got to learn the key. You've got to know what all the symbols mean and how everything interplays, but once you do, Colab plays in a snap. The decisions are very quick and fun and laid out for you, but the strategy is actually really deep about how you utilize your workers and your dice and where you put them so that you can maximize not just this turn's efficiency, but later turns' efficiency, and how you'll make sure that you're not just putting your incredibly tasty, awesome dice exactly where your opponents want it to be so that they can put your poor minion to work as well. These guys need to unionize because they are being overworked. Just as a note on these guys, these are just 3D printed little minions, but they're adorable. The art on them is really fun, and I can't wait to see the final product on these little guys. They have a really fun table presence, and it's a really nice addition to the board. So yeah, let me share a little bit of my thoughts. As a note to the board, again, I really like this concept of a board. The board is about as asymmetric or random and replayable as you can get for a board, and I love that. Every game you will build that board, it's going to be different. The way that the labs are positioned and the spokes and the build on those labs is going to be different. There's a lot of fresh replayability packed into this board, and I think that it's a real testament to the way that Portal Dragons was very mindful when they built this game of like, we don't want this to be just a board. And it could be. This thing could be a board with maybe the little advancement tiles just getting added on. But they wanted to keep it as fresh as possible, and that's really noteworthy, and it comes through on the design, and I really like that. So gold star there. The cards, and I've kind of talked about them already, and the in-game scoring cards are huge pluses for me. I always like a grid builder. This had a little bit of a, I kept harkening back to like Ex Libris, where you're like building your library, and you're like, I've got to get everything in order. You're kind of doing that, where you're thinking about how you can not just build what you want where, but you're thinking about what in the future do I need to place where in my grid, and that's a really fun little puzzle to have. And then again, the in-game scoring conditions are great because they're unique to you, and you have this choice of like, do I use it now mid-game, or do I think the in-game points are going to outweigh the benefit that I would gain mid-game by playing it? And those choices really make or break your score in the game, and that's a fun position to be in because all that power is on you as the player. So that's a plus. Again, playtime is not long on this game. Once everybody knows what they're doing, you can chew through a game of this in 40 to 60 minutes, and that's really fun. That's a nice digestible time. You don't need to chalk out your whole, Saturday afternoon to play a game of Colab. You can get it to the table and get through it pretty quickly, which is nice. Again, it plays 1 to 4 players. There is a solo mode, but like Rodney, I'm going to leave you guys to discover that on your own. It's a nice little mode where you're going to be competing to, again, build that grid out, but you'll be working against an AI opponent. And I just think it's great that we have another game that is being mindful of the fact that there are solo players out there, and that's an important thing. And so it's great that this game is the full package that has a solo mode, and we'll see a nice range of players. As always, this is a Kickstarter, so I'm wondering maybe there will be some expansion that brings in a 5th player. That 5th number is always that sweet spot for gaming groups, so we'll see. Fingers crossed. I don't know. But this game is really fun. The player count, again, with a lot of games like this, it is more hectic and a little more fun the more players there are. I would say I think this game is prime at 3 or 4 players. With only 2, you're looking at many less minions on the board, which means a lot less interplay. There are some special setup rules for 2 players that help balance that and add some additional elements to the game, which does keep it fresh. But the game, I think, is best experienced at 3 or 4 players, where those spokes are cluttered with minions, and everywhere you go, there's just lots happening, and there's lots to contemplate about how you can use your minions and your resources, but also, hey, why not take advantage of your opponent's resources that they've left out there on the minions that are working. And that's a really, really fun experience. So overall, Colab is just a really nice addition to the table. It highlights and kind of hybridizes some worker placement and some Tableau engine builder hybrid, a little bit of dice manipulation in there, and it just mushes them together in a beautiful chimera, which is something that these scientists would probably want to create anyway. And so that's a fun little tribute to the gaming industry within the theme, and it's great. So I really like Colab. I think it's really fun. I'm excited to see the final product, and I think the Kickstarter is going to be a big success because I think people are going to see and value the thought that went into the board structure and the interplay between workers and things like that. There is no strong take that element in this game, which I think a lot of people will appreciate. There's no space stealing from each other. It's a nice kind of just collaborative event where you can still kind of, we'll say, mess with your opponent a little bit by what you leave out there on the board, and that's a really fun element, and it's a nice addition to the gaming industry in this sphere. So those are my thoughts. I would give Colab a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10 for being just a really fun. The 0.5 just was for the minis and how cute they are. But it is a really solid game. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. It's got a lot of fresh take on some very tried and true systems and mechanics in the gaming world, and I'm excited to see what the final product comes to look like. So I hope you have enjoyed getting a look at this game. I hope it's encouraged you to check out the Kickstarter and see what's going on at Portal Dragon. I'm really excited for their future, and I hope that they continue to put out quality content like Colab in the future. So I'm excited for that as well. Thanks again, guys, for coming to Meeple Mountain for your board game related content and questions and needs. I hope you will continue to do so. And as always, happy gaming. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out some of our other Meeple Mountain content. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is Tyler Williams, signing off.